a portfolio. Just to start with the basics, we're talking about either it takes many different forms. We could be talking about a website or even when it is developed for mobile, for the web, it normally does have a web or mobile version that can be viewed seamlessly. And many art directors and leads and curators are viewing your work on mobile devices. So it's good to keep in mind. While it doesn't come into play so much as of late with hard copy portfolios, like the traditional portfolio case with large reproductions of your work, or books that are commonly used by illustrators and architecture majors. Just with COVID, we haven't had those kinds of in-person opportunities, but I'm sure that we will get back to that. And it has been a great feature of showing your work in in-person situations. What can be misunderstood as a portfolio would be like an Instagram account or a sketchbook. While those can be insightful for showing your work to employers, that is not a curated body of work. So it's a great promotional tool to have Instagram, but it's not really a portfolio. And the next thing that we'd be talking about is a demo reel, which is typically a combination of works within 1 or 2 minutes long, showing your best work, typically in a fast-paced, edited composition. And when we're talking about a reel, we are not talking about a full-length movie or short movie that you may have worked on. And we're also not talking about documentation. So you may have documentation of an environment or something that you worked on or a model, and that is not a reel. This is really intended for live action or for animation. So one of the best places to start, because you're all capable artists and designers. When you see things, you can translate into things that you can do and that you can take forward to implement on your own. And so the best way to start this process is to look for inspiration. We could be talking about professional work, then looking behind the scenes at the alumni that may be on Instagram and LinkedIn that are associated with that professional work, and also looking at your peers on a platform like Behance, which would include your fellow students and also alums that have left the school. So in this case, we might find Mighty Oak, which is an amazing studio that works closely with our team over the years. And they're located in Brooklyn, New York, and they've gotten many accolades over the years. So here they earned an award from Fast Company. And that would be a great way to catch your attention and to check out Mighty Oak and maybe see, oh, who works at Mighty Oak, especially any fellow alumni. And LinkedIn is a great place to find those people. And to dig a bit deeper, we could be looking at Anthony Galente's Instagram account to get a sense of what his personal work might look like. Or you may see glimpses of his work in progress or images of inspiration that he uses as part of his creative process. And it's even possible to check out Anthony's presence in Behance. I find that this is particularly insightful because you may see a mixture of his student work coupled with his new work and his fresh work. So it's a great perspective to get kind of a holistic view of some of the artists or animators that you may aspire to emulate or to be inspired by in your own work. So one question that we do get quite frequently is, when should you begin this process of working on your portfolio? And what does it mean? At what stage in your life at RISD, where should you be with respect to your portfolio and your demo reel? So I thought I'd provide a guide for this. Here, and amazing art from Pixar's Coco. This is your time to be creative, to experiment, to practice, it's not a time to be too critical about what you're doing. You're in an exploratory mode. And so really embrace it. The thing that you could work on, which would be really useful and important, is getting into a good cadence and habit of documenting your work and providing background info. These kinds of habits and approaches will help you very strongly as you're progressing into your junior and senior years and refining your portfolio. So sharing things like your concepts, your iterative work, and the final results is all appropriate for your portfolio. Then we might be talking about your third year, senior year, fifth year to graduation. And I had mentioned being inspired and checking out professional work. And so looking at professional portfolios and organizations and company work can be a great reference to help shape the art direction of your own portfolio. So you want to gear your work towards your career path and towards the things that you're most excited about. And your challenge, and we're more than happy to work with you on this, is to figure out how you're going to curate your work and to organize your work. Typically at this stage, you have a lot to show, but you need to be very intentional about what you start with. And then when we're talking about after graduation, sharing your professional work, and hopefully you've got a demonstrated career path so it's clear the type of work that you like and want to do because it's so well represented in your portfolio. The challenge is keep it up to date as you are on new responsibilities. And at some point, we hope that you can pay it forward and give back by participating as a reviewer at something like our portfolio review events. But let's get back to some more inspiration. So again, using professional work out in the world, here we see that there was a award for the Shorty Awards. And if we dig into some of the winners, we're finding Farm from a Box. And this was a project that was created by some alums of the school. And the studio is called Socio Fabrica. And so here we can see Sylvia, who would like to connect with, who's a co-founder. Maybe we can learn more information about her so we can check out her profile in LinkedIn and learn more about her career path, which will also hopefully be insightful to you. We can look at her social media account on Instagram to learn more about her life and her professional practice. And we can check out her RISD portfolio. And I have been consistently impressed to see that even award-winning artists and designers like Sylvia are still maintaining their Behance portfolio. This is very exciting. And then we might be looking at a fine artist like Anina Major, incredible sculptor who we've been very fond of working with in the past. And so with Anina, she does maintain a presence on LinkedIn. And I think that there is a assumption sometimes that fine art isn't represented on a site like LinkedIn, which has this very kind of like commercial or corporate appearance, but it's an amazing resource even for fine artists. And this is proof of it right here, being able to learn more about Anina and her career path and her network. And of course, we can check out her Instagram account to gain inspiration and also look at her portfolio on Behance. So there's much to learn through this process. So at this point, and Alan has a link that he'll share in the chat, we have, your portfolio will only look as good as the documentation that you're providing, right? So it's very smart to get really good at reproducing your two-dimensional art. So learning your way around a scanner. If you have flat artwork that you can show, using a scanner can be a great way of capturing that work. Or sometimes your work may be too big to fit onto a flatbed scanner, or it may be physical 3D objects or an installation or performance. So taking the time to learn the proper ways of lighting and using a camera will really pay off in your portfolio. It's so key to start with good quality reproductions of your work. I did actually have a video that's not working, but Alan did share the link. So I do encourage you to check out the page when you get a chance. I'm sorry for that glitch. All right, so with design considerations. So, we've got our work, it's documented, but now we have so many different options for how we can display our work. And I think one thing that I always try to relay to students and to alums that I'm speaking with, sometimes they'll be saying like, oh my gosh, I have to learn how to custom code my website because I want it to be super amazing. And then, you have to remember like, well, are you a concept artist like Christina here? Christina has no interest in being a web developer or no interest in making custom fancy websites. So going simple and allowing her concept art and her illustration work to stand on its own is key. So let yourself off the hook. You're already busy enough. You have so much to work on. Why not use an out-of-the-box solution to produce a simple layout for your work? What I think is really successful about this simple layout here with Christina's work, or even when it's like a rigid grid like this for Danny Lee's portfolio, this allows someone like me as an employer to quickly get a view of 9 of your projects. And rather than it being a linear experience, I think that this is pretty obvious, but I can go in and check out the work that is most related to me as an employer or the kind of positions that I'm hiring for. So this is a very effective way of presenting your work. And if I click on one of these thumbnails, I typically get an expanded view of the project that might have concept and process work. So this is a very clever way of presenting your work. And we can see even over these last 3 portfolio sites that there is something to just using a simple grid and allowing the work to stand on its own. And we do have RISD portfolios on the Behance network. This is switched into a different mode just recently. So the branded version of RISD portfolios no longer exists. However, if you go to RISD portfolios, the URL, you're able, it sends you straight to the Behance site and you're able to do a search for the portfolios related to the school. So it's really just as good, and it's still a great platform to be working with. And it's very easy to use. So it's a great platform to start with, really. Additionally, Cargo has presented an incentive to RISD students, including a code. You should have all received email about this, but if you didn't, I have some information here and you can always reach out to us if you have any questions. They included a coupon code that you can see in bold. And this would be to set up a project on Cargo. Now, we do not have any partnership or special arrangement with them other than they wanted to get RISD students on board. So we wanted to share that with you all. And if you have difficulties or questions, you want to reach out to Cargo, which is studentprogram@cargo.site. So we've covered the different design considerations that you can have for a portfolio. But now one of the big concerns is, what do you show? And one of the elements that is a big influence here is the timing. So if you're applying to a job that is a competitive job and you're joining a lot of other applicants, then these employers need to get through these applications very quickly. So it's crucial that you start your portfolio. The first 10 seconds of that experience is a very crucial time when you're first presenting your work. So this means that when we're curating our work and we're sending our portfolio link to a certain employer, we want to make sure that the first 3 to 6 to 9 images are as closely related to what they do and like our most important work to make the best first impression. So you want to think quality over quantity. You know, you don't get any points for having the most work. Frankly, these employers, because of how rushed they are, they're only going to see like a brief body of your work. I had mentioned customizing the way that you curate your work depending on your career path. I also mentioned showing what you want to do. So a common thing that I may hear is like a graphic designer that's showing typography and they're really good at it, but they don't like doing typography. So if you don't like doing something, even if you're good at it, there's no sense in showing that up front. Why not focus on the things that you can do well, that you're passionate about, and that relate to the company? And it is also really important to include creative process and showing the process from your concept work through iterations to the final result. This is something that art directors and art leads love because they can see how you're able to carry your vision from start to finish, how you're able to express your raw ideas through quick gestural sketches or quick layouts that you're trying to just sketch down before working it out to the final version. So it gives art directors a great sense of your abilities and process. So it's always great to share your background info and your story. So with your with your portfolio, you have these moments where you can include your profile info. You could include descriptions about the project that you worked on. This could be a title for the piece, or it could be a school project that had like an assignment or a prompt, the year that it was done, the media, technology, dimensions, tools, techniques, anything that you can share that gives insights about your creative process is really important to share in your portfolio. You know, you want to address the question that an employer might have where they're looking at your work and they're impressed and they might think, oh, how did they do that? Or what did they use to do that? And why not give that information to them right up front rather than waiting for them to ask? So for so for a printed portfolio, so we'll start to go through the portfolios now. So for a printed portfolio, where this is the traditional experience that everyone thinks of through art school, and it's typical to distill your works down to 10 to 20 pieces for fine art. And for design, it's usually compressed down to 6 to 12 projects, so slightly less than fine art. And this is a linear experience that you're providing. So everything that I had described about your design considerations for the website and this nonlinear experience goes out the window. And the opportunity that you have, though, when you're doing a hard copy portfolio is that now you're able to structure this as a story and a narrative. So you want to think really, really carefully about what's the first piece that you start with to hopefully give them a great first impression. And how does it lead from piece to piece? Are there things that you can connect the dots to as you show different pieces? Like maybe it's an evolution of your use of a certain tool, or maybe it's a stylistic choice that you've evolved through a series of pieces. And you always try to end with a bang too. So like leave a lasting memory when you've finally reached the end of your presentation. What you will find when you're presenting your work in person is that some people, when they're viewing your work, will want to interrupt you and ask questions. So being prepared for that, of course, is great. But you should also go into an experience like this ready to show your work and to tell your story. Books, of course, are also relevant, not just the large scale work. And books are very common with architecture majors and with illustration. It's very clever to provide a table of contents at the beginning and your resume to use that as a reference. For some architects, we have consistently gotten great feedback from visiting architecture firms that they love seeing fine art embellished on the covers of architecture portfolios. So that can be a great way to add some nice touches to the cover. And it is a distinguishing factor as well, because not everyone that's studying at a architecture school has a foundation year and does observational drawings. So you should bring that to the foreground and lead with that, just to show them that this is your capability. Um, there are ways of, you can print your work using services like Artifact Uprising or Blurb. And for online portfolios, when we're talking about these PDF portfolio books, Issue and Folio HD are quite good for that purpose. So for the online portfolio, as I mentioned, it has the advantage of being a non-linear experience. You are control over the content. So as you're making updates, you're assured that as long as people have the link to your portfolio, they'll be seeing your latest and greatest updates. You can customize a website so easily depending on the audience. So you may have a couple of different career paths with 2 different homepage experiences that you can send discreetly depending on which type of company you're applying to. So just gives you so much flexibility. And then of course, many of the platforms are capable of being shown on mobile platforms, which is so important for all of our busy employers and curators and gallerists who are on the go and checking out work in their spare time. So I've mentioned that we have RISD Portfolios as a common platform. Adobe Portfolio is also quite good, and Wix and Squarespace. And then recently, I had mentioned the Cargo site. That's also another great platform. So moving over to demo reels, we've spent a lot of time on the portfolios, and the demo reel is also quite important. We've got a great overview of that. So a demo reel is typically 1 to 2 minutes. It's great to have a title card at the start and the end, which a title card typically includes your name, the school that you go to, your contact info. If you have a portfolio, a link to your URL for your portfolio. And it's great to start that and end it with a title card. We do also recommend including a subtitle on each clip in your demo reel. So you may have like a small numeral in the bottom left-hand corner or something like that. And that allows you to use a demo reel breakdown as we see here. So we see featured works, #1, Herald of the Sea. What this allows an animation director to do is they can hit pause on a clip that they like or make note of a clip's number and look it up in the breakdown. And so you can have great information about the breakdown where it may be the client that you were working for, the title, the medium and technology that you were using, and a link to the full length. Like, why not? What a great way of providing a full, robust experience to the viewer. Common platforms now are YouTube and Vimeo, no surprise. And if you've got any work that's sensitive, so let's say that you're doing work for an employer who does not want you to be showing the intellectual property that you worked on. They want you to use a controlled environment to show that type of work. So using any of these secure platforms like Dropbox or Google Docs or iCloud can be a great way to share something privately and password protect it to ensure that it's safe. So beyond the portfolio, we'll be talking about features like Instagram. Instagram is a great promotional platform for you. It's not a portfolio in that it's not a curated body of work. However, it's a great promotional tool. It's a great glimpse into what you're capable of and what you're inspired by and what you're working on. You're always going to be looking for opportunities of staying in touch with people so that they don't forget about you and being available. And so Instagram is a great promotional tool for that. Then of course, we had mentioned LinkedIn. So having a decent profile that has your basic information from your resume will help you have a good LinkedIn profile. And public exhibitions and making a point of keeping in touch. So you might have like your top 10 preferred employers that you want to reach out to. And by keeping in touch with them, it just makes them know that you are still available and still interested. And I'd also like to just point out that for juniors and higher, so juniors to seniors, graduate students, they're eligible to participate in the remote version of Design Portfolio Review this year. It's happening on March 17th and 18th in the evening. So hopefully, well, we're very hopeful that this steers clear of your class obligations. And it allows you to have some experiences getting portfolio reviews. I'm showing the participating companies page right now on the dedicated website for Design Portfolio Review. And so this is a great place to keep an eye on the companies that are registering and also the majors that they're interested in. And you can see when they are going to be participating. And we'll be having a whole prep program for this that you'll be hearing about through email a couple of weeks before the portfolio reviews. So stay tuned for that. And I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. So I'm going to stop sharing now and be glad to be taking some questions. So yeah, let's
Great.
open it for some questions.
Nice job, Jason. Thank you. Just so you know, I did share the link for the Design Portfolio Review participating companies, and that is a list that's growing. I mean, it grows daily, actually. We're still taking registrations till the end of the month. So, and Jason, we do have a couple questions for you. One of them is, Evelyn asked, would you recommend Cargo over Adobe Portfolio as a website builder? And I guess expand that into, do you have other preferred?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I think the best thing to, so the way to answer this is it's one of those depends kind of question. It depends on your own personal preferences. But what I would strongly recommend is take a moment to consider, like, what is your criteria? So your criteria at this certain time might be that if you're a student and you're not close to graduation, you may be thinking, I just need something that's easy to use because I'm so busy with my student work. So convenience and ease of use is really important. I don't need a custom URL. I don't need it to look custom in any way. I just need a repository for my work that's professional enough to share with employers if I'm trying to apply for an internship or something like that. That will then by going and kicking the tires with different portfolio providers, you'll get the sense of like how it feels to use them. It really is like a personal decision, and you won't know the answer until you start uploading images, see how easy it is to resize them, see what limitations the platform has. For Adobe portfolios, that does tend to be something that is more custom. And with Adobe Portfolio, you may also need to have a domain name that you've purchased and assigned to your portfolio site. And that also takes some logistical work. It can be affordable and it can be worth the effort. But again, like if it depends on whether or not you're coming up on graduation where you feel as though having your own branded website is so crucial. Oh, you're muted, Alan.
Got you. Thank you, Jason. Yeah. Sorry about that. So I'm going to contextualize this question. Pablo asked, how should sketches be laid out? And I just took note that when this question came in, you were talking about portfolio book sections, like physical books. And I guess I want to expand that question just a tiny bit and say, should you work on something that can be left behind with an employer? So you've got your physical portfolio, how should that be laid out and everything, but what can I leave behind?
Yeah, excellent. So, you know, with respect to this question, I suppose that like in the most simple terms, you want to make sure that the sketches are large enough where you can actually see detail and they're legible enough to parse, but not so large that they take up too much space. And I think that that's a huge element of layout. I mean, when you're looking at you're starting a physical book project, your first step should be to figure out what's the dimensions of my book, of course. So for many architects, they go with like a landscape oriented book, because if you have like an elevation or something like that, it really lends itself to seeing it in a horizontal layout. So this would affect how you're laying out your sketches. So the other factor that I would say is that you want to avoid having repetition. So if you've got sketches that have the same subject matter repeatedly and it feels like it's redundant, then that's probably going overboard. So you want to have these sketches at the scale that makes the most sense, and also with a variety to indicate some kind of progression. So I think that when you look at a book like the books from, I know this is different, this is not a portfolio book, but like the art of Pixar movies, those are always so fascinating because it starts with the very initial concept sketches, which are so rough. They're practically like napkin sketches. And then you see how that idea evolves into the finished rendered character or environment or what have you. So that's actually like a good thing to use as a guide in terms of like how you're showing your work and how you're curating the work that you're showing.
Cool, Jason.
And then
Oh, go
leave,
ahead.
sorry,
You go.
you've also said leave behind. So for the leave behind, again, it
Oh,
does come
yeah.
back to the layout and the dimensions of the piece that you're using. So if you want to do something creative and you've got like a ribbon folded, like super wide landscape piece, then maybe you really have fun with that. Or maybe it's like an 8 by 10 piece of paper and you're working within those constraints. It really does come back to like making sure that things are large enough to parse, but not so large that you're being wasteful with the space that you have available.
Thanks, Jason.
Yeah.
And you know what, I'm actually gonna skip ahead just quickly so we don't get too far away. When you were talking about RISD portfolios on Behance versus Cargo, um, Julius asked, they missed the answer, is RISD portfolio site free?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's free.
So that is still happening as a free site.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm gonna get back in order here. So,
Yeah.
so this is a big question, so I'm just gonna like read it right straightforward to you. I'm a performance artist among other fields. I'm a performance artist among other fields because my work is interdisciplinary. I feel strongly about its worth in my digital portfolio, but worry about watering down the strength of my work by breaking it into new, different exploratory field. Would you suggest a contractor to do the editing of the video documentation or use a student to be cost effective, pros and cons? And this is being asked by Julius.
Mm.
So does that, did I get there?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Thank you. Um, you know, I actually do have experience doing installation art, and it was always so challenging, especially if it was like a low light situation, because it's so hard to capture. Or, you may have like an environment that you're in, and your lens isn't quite wide enough to fit everything in. So your capturing solution is going to be super important. And I think of, if you take like a director's or like a filmographer's approach to documenting, it could be picking deliberate camera angles that you want to capture and making sure that the light is good enough and timing everything so that it's captured and recorded in a way that you can edit after the fact. But I'm also really excited by some of the new technology that's come out. Like you can get 360-degree cameras that you could put in the space and give the viewer the option to scroll around and view in 3D space, to experience your work the way that they best want to see it. So, it's really like one of those things where you have to figure out, like, think about the experience that the viewer's having and what is missing from the live experience. I think it's also wise to consider, doing some intentional composed shots that may show some like revealing details or some of the really nice parts of your work. Because I can understand your concern over documenting it and not diluting it. Um, and there's always concept art and production work that goes into your work. And so any of those sketches, any of the material reference or construction and fabrication that you did or designing, any of the sculptures that you created or the lighting tests that you did, try to document it in a way to show your creative process, if at all possible.
Great, thank you, Jason. Big question, big question. So Vernon asks, should we pay for services like Wix or Squarespace? The free versions put ads on the websites.
Yeah, Vernon, honestly, if it really comes down to whether you can, like what your financial situation is. But I will just say very strongly that many employers do not care. So if you're showing work and it's easy to see and there's some advertisements on screen that are annoying, they're not going to equate that to being a slight against you. So whatever you can do to show your work clean and clear is most important. And I can totally appreciate that you may not be able to justify like paying money just so that people don't see ads. The RISD portfolios on Behance, for years that's been available. And there are some things about it that are maybe distracting, like there's a lot of controls and like buttons and that sort of interface. But that hasn't deterred any employers that see promising work and that they'll just deal with the platform that you're using as long as they're impressed and see a good connection to your work. Thanks for asking that.
Great. So Sebastian is asking about portfolio review and just commenting that they're unable to find it in Artworks. And we should just say that those things are not available in Artworks yet to students. And if you want to expand on that, Jason.
Yeah, we put a lot of effort into the website, so I am going to direct you to go to the Design Portfolio Review website, and the top right link is registration, and you can see the sign up process. So this is an interesting event because even though I keep referring to it as an event, it's not an event in Artworks. It's what's called an on-campus interview. And so we will be opening up signups for you on March 10th at 6 p.m. sharp. You'll be getting many emails about this in the coming weeks. So don't worry, we'll be sending lots of stuff to you. But on that Wednesday, March 10th at 6 p.m., we open up signups and it's first come, first serve to go in and sign up for a time on your favorite employers. And then that will run for 2 days, the signups. And so that's the way to do it. You will start to see the companies appearing in Artworks, but you won't be able to interact with those listings, not until the 10th.
Great, thanks very much. So Jen is asking, can you give us some advice to graduating class on expanding our networks in the professional field? For example, connecting to alums on LinkedIn, emailing professors. I think about recommendations. What are some of the steps that they can begin with?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Great question. So, I mean, this was my intention behind mentioning like looking for inspiration. And for the context tonight, we were talking about inspiration for your portfolio, but of course that also applies to your career pursuits. So if you are finding inspiration in work that you're seeing from the Cartoon Network that's affecting your reel or your portfolio, then you would also be looking at Cartoon Network on LinkedIn to see who works there and who holds a title that's similar to your title that you want to have. So you might look for your fellow animators or your fellow storyboard artists or something like that. And then another dimension of this is that on LinkedIn, you can look for your fellow alumni who work at these companies. So your fellow alumni should be particularly welcoming to you if you reach out. And they're the ones that are going to have the inside scoop about what's going on with positions in the coming year. Is there an unannounced project that's coming up that they're going to be looking for staff members for? You don't find out these things without doing that outreach. And LinkedIn is an incredibly useful way to reach out. It's unlike a social network in that you connect to people for social reasons on a social network. But with LinkedIn, it's the equivalent of like a virtual conference. You know, you go to a conference to learn some subject matter, but also you're hoping to meet some people. And that is why people opt into joining LinkedIn so that they can connect with others that are related to their field. And just like I had mentioned with portfolios, you can look at people's Instagrams and their portfolio websites, and the same applies. That's a great way to network with professionals. I'd love for you to come in and to do some of this with an advisor where we could take one of your examples and work on it together.
Awesome, thank you. So Zelin, and I hope I'm saying your name properly, is asking, is it necessary for architecture or interior architecture majors to prepare a demo reel, or is a book/electronic portfolio enough?
Thank you for asking. And I didn't think to clarify that, so I really appreciate the question. So when you're doing motion-based work, that would be suitable for a demo reel. And for visual artists or for designers or architects, using a book is conventional. It's perfectly normal and perfectly great. You can convey everything that you need to through a great designed portfolio book. So no need for a reel for that. There may be some things that you work on where you're doing a building and you're doing like a visualization or a landscape and you're doing a rendered visualization that's animated. But I wouldn't recommend making a reel with that. I would recommend having that footage available on your portfolio website if you have a portfolio website.
Fabulous, perfect. So Suman asks, do you recommend showing the thinking/creative process for each project in a portfolio, for example, the sketches or concept drawings and ideas? And I know you got into this earlier, but if you had anything you wanted to add to that.
So the answer is yes, please. Sometimes you do hear, I have heard it said before that like, oh, you should only show your finished work. But really, I am adamant that it is very important to share your process for the reason that I mentioned before, like an art lead or an art director or gallerist that wants to learn more about your creative process, they cannot if you don't share it. So it's customary to have your money shot or like your best image, final finished image as a thumbnail on your portfolio. Then you click on that image and it expands with a full view chronologically of your process, starting with your concept, working through your iterations and your tests and trials, and resulting in the final product. So it's definitely important to share that work. And for anyone that doesn't want to see your process, which I can't imagine why they wouldn't, but if they don't want to, then they don't need to click the link to get into your process work. They can look at all of the sweet finished images in the the grid or what have you of your website.
Great. So Madison is asking, so this is kind of a question related to the performance and installation question that was earlier. So my work is mostly installation and performance based, and since documentation of this work is not appropriate for a demo reel, is the best place to show this documentation on my website? Are there other appropriate formats for this documentation?
Yeah, so this question does relate very closely to the previous question about installation and performance-based work. So I will just reiterate briefly that I think that you're on the right track. Like, it doesn't make sense to make a reel for an installation. Um, you can use a combination. There are no rules. So you can use a combination of um, like motion recorded or video recorded footage, as well as some carefully composed still images. Your concept work would be brilliant to look at, and design work for the set or whatever it was that you created for your installation. And then, as I had also mentioned, it would be great to experiment with some newer technology too. So you may use like a 360 degree camera and record footage or still images that way, and allow the viewer to pan around your space. So trying to have fun with it. It'll come down a lot to like your lighting and camera work. So it may be wise to try to solicit support from other people that know how to do that type of work at school, like your peers, if you don't know how to do it yourself.
Great, thank you, Jason. So Serena is asking, so I love the idea of including both animations and illustrations in my portfolio, but I'm not sure whether or not I should choose just one or show both. I've heard that employers seek people who show strong focus in one specific discipline, but I like focusing on both of these disciplines.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. And, like, illustration and animation is so closely intertwined as well. So I don't think that it would hurt to show both. And what it, my first reaction is, why not use a website where you can feature your illustrated work and right next to it have an embedded video that shows the animated version of it? Or maybe it's just a way of showing both at the same time, your illustration work and then an embedded reel. I would not recommend incorporating still images into your demo reel though. Your demo reel is intended to be a pretty fast-paced piece. As I said, like 1 to 2 minutes long. So I think that it would kind of like kill the energy, and it's not the best optimal presentation format to compress an illustration down to like a video window. So let the illustration live in its glory, on a 2D display on your website, and then have that embedded video player alongside.
Awesome, thank you. So Julius is asking, if you're proficient in the design commercial work and its effects in your overall portfolio presentation, when representing fine art works, do you suggest to try to emulate existing ways to represent my fine art work, or should I feel confident in my design process?
Let me take a minute to consider that question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, right. So you're a proficient designer commercially, yet you want to show your fine artwork. And so this does really, unless I'm like butchering your question, and I hope that you'll reach out to me or ask, clarify your question if I'm getting it wrong here, but keeping it simple to me, if like what you're trying to feature is your fine artwork, then be minimal and be simple with your presentation and allow your fine art to stand and take the spotlight. Especially, and I'm sure you can appreciate this as a designer, some of the best designs are actually like invisible and transparent. Like you don't realize that you're looking at design. So I could imagine a very successful experience where I'm looking at your fine artwork and I have no sense that there's any design happening. So I hope that this gets to the point of your question, and I hope that you'll reach out again if we can help again.
Awesome, nice. Thank you, Jason. And we're winding down to the last question, actually. So just to put that out there. So Emma is wrapping it up with, what should we wear to portfolio interviews or general interviews, business casual. And I guess maybe talk about live in person, but also this format that we are in right now.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, so thanks for asking about this. I do want to just make another plug for the design portfolio review and the fine art portfolio review, which will be a great opportunity to practice this. And we will be having prep programs before those events where we'll be talking about these kinds of issues. But I'm psyched to address this question now as well. I think that like the whenever I think about your appearance, I always just feel like you want to be presenting yourself intentionally. So for some people, dressing intentionally means that they're going with something that's more formal to show that they're taking it really serious. Or they might go with like a conventional, like business casual attire. You look put together, but you've cleaned yourself up for your presentation. Or some people are very creative in the way that they're presenting themselves, and they might wear apparel that shows their personality and style. And that's amazing too. I think that if you're giving any kind of vibe that it shows that you're unprepared or don't care, and that's somehow reflected in your appearance, then that's something that it's best to try to steer clear of that kind of impression. And I should also mention that our portfolio reviews will be virtual and over remote this year for obvious reasons. We've actually been like so psyched on the reception of these events. We did Internship Connect. We were not expecting a great turnout from companies, and we had a very strong attendance from companies. And some of the companies and students said that it was actually a better experience than the in-person event. So we're really encouraged by that. So in that case, we're talking about presenting yourself, from the belly button up. And that's what you need to concern yourself with. And then if you're in an in-person event, then of course it's your full get up that you're going to want to be mindful of. But thanks for the question, Julius. Oh, sorry. No, it wasn't Julius. It was the person before. Got that. And you are, oh, there you go, Alan. Oh, you're muted actually.
I thought I hit that. It was Emma asking that question. And, Jason, if I could just throw in, I remember when Netflix came to talk to us about their head of design, their VP of design came to talk to RISD students. And one of the things that they said was, a lot of students think or people who are trying to be employed are try to start to act and look like what we think Netflix wants us to look like or act like. And Netflix and you know what, I would take this stance any day. They're like, you know what, we want individuals, we want people to come to the table as themselves. You know what, let us grow from like, if we just pack in a room the same exact people all the time, if it turns out that your style and your work isn't a good match, then it's not a good match. If you force yourself kind of into some block, we're all going to figure that out, and it's like, what kind of investment did you make? So like, really, and it's so cliche, but being yourself, like, you're going to find that right match by just honoring yourself.
Totally. Thanks for mentioning it.
Sure. And you know what? Okay, cool. So Julius was expanding on the question, but coincidentally, you have an appointment with Julius, which is a great way. So they're going to wait until tomorrow. So thank you for that, Julius. And they'll expand that question with you at your 1:30 appointment. And that is just for one, that's the last question. And secondly, just a little plug for, the value of this presentation is to get you, thinking and started, but really like getting to meet with us individually as advisors. That's when a lot of big work is going to happen, and you can get much more nuanced and personal about the questions that you're asking.
Absolutely. I'm super psyched on the turnout tonight. So thanks everybody for coming. And let's keep the conversation going. We have a lot more programs coming your way that you'll be finding out about through emails that Alan lovingly produces day after day. So, uh, thanks for coming out, and I hope this was helpful, and I hope we keep the conversation going. So to meet with us individually, Sophia, you can
Yeah,
actually book an
perfect.
appointment in Artworks. So the same system that you use to register for the event tonight, it has an appointments link on the left, and it'll show you the available advisors. I like meeting with students, so you're welcome to meet with me. And we've got a number of other advisors that are on the team. So I
And
hope we hear from you.
I also shared the link in the Meet With Us link, which has all the ways that you could be meeting with us. So
Awesome.
that's the last link I just shared.
All right, well, thanks everybody.
Thanks all. Take care. Thanks for coming tonight and good night.